The sample information indicates that actually men spend what? Well, less than or equal to the amount of money that women spend. It could be that they spend the same, but this is less than or equal. Okay? So this is what this indicates for us. Okay, we're not rejecting the null. Okay, does anybody have any questions on what we just did here? There's no questions on that? Okay, we're going to have to look at an example, some examples now about what? The proportion examples. Okay, so you're going to have two groups now with proportion examples. Let's write it down over here, for example. Question? It depends on the noise. If there's going to be noise, then we'll close it, but you can open it for now. Because that's more important. So if we look at proportion questions in regards to different groups of people, we can maybe think about it this way. Who tends to do what? Maybe smoke more, men or women? Men. Who tends to drink more, men or women? You could even look at who tends to drink and smoke. Women tend to do that more? What else? What could you say? There's different sort of things you can say. You can say, what group suffers the higher mental illness rate? Men or women? Women. You actually could get into a lot more detail. There's a comparison between married couples. You can say, you could look at women who are married versus women who are what? Not married. And you know that women who are married suffer mental illness at a greater proportion than women who are not married. Did you guys know that? That's true. Huh? Because men make women crazy. Yes, that's true. Men are more likely to die of I think it's of a heart attack if they are married than if they are not married. Now, you can have all kinds of conclusions about that. You can think, well, why is that? Well, who knows? Some people like to say, well, because No, some people could say that women are cooking for their husbands, I guess, and you ever hear that sort of stuff? And they're killing them? Well, they're not trying. Okay, so we can look at those kind of populations. But actually, people, Eddie has an interesting story. Should we say that, Eddie? Should we tell him that? We can't tell him that, can we? Yes. Oh, you don't remember? See, Eddie knows about a lot of the examples I go through already. He already knows, Should we tell him that story? Yeah. About your father and his ex-girlfriend? Should I bring that up? Well, Eddie's father broke up with a lady years ago. This is a long time ago, And for some reason, although I asked Eddie why he did this, he doesn't have an answer. He doesn't even know. He said, for some reason, he broke up and he had dinner with the ex-girlfriend. And what did she do, Ed? Poison. She tried to poison him. I tend to wonder how how what? I tend to wonder how often that actually really occurred. Or does it happen? Does it happen? Yeah. Some that what? Women snap? Yes, they do. I have heard in even some cultures, where women are actually trained to be completely submissive. I hear that in some cultures, those women snap much more. Like you, as a male, you'll wake up and she'll have a knife. Do you guys know that? It's true. So you can talk about, in a lot of the applications for what we're talking about, even in psychology, some of you psychology majors, or even sociology majors, you guys talk about this a lot. And you should, because you're comparing groups. Like, okay, what happens versus one culture and another culture where certain things happen? Guess what? The statistics indicate that you are more likely to hurt your husband if you're married if you are in a certain culture for certain reasons. And a lot of it probably has to do with the being submissive toward men. I guess there's sort of a hidden anger that's sort of discussed, or even not really talked about, a hidden anger toward men for having to be as submissive as they are. So I even wonder about, the comment you made, and I remember I even asked Eddie, so why did your dad actually have lunch with her, or whatever, have her allow her to do this if you broke up with her? Well, he was leaving her. Yeah. She knew it before. She knew it. She sensed it. She sensed it before he actually did it, and she thought, did she try to take her own life, or is it just his? Oh. Wow. Eddie, what happened to her? Did they? Probably not. You used to talk about. Probably not, because probably not. I don't know. Probably not. I don't think these days, even now, I don't think that. Or even back then, would they actually even arrest women for something like that back then, Eddie? You think they would? How do you even prove it? They'd have to take the meal. I don't know. Some of those things happen. So if you want to compare groups, let's see the proportion of what? How about this? I even read last night an article in Newsweek. Did you know that the proportion of men versus women? Men are more likely. What is it? I think men. Is it men are more? Yeah, men are more likely to kill themselves than women, I think, according to this article. Does anybody know anything about it?
Yeah. I know why, because women use barbiturates to try to commit suicide, but the men usually they use guns, so they're more likely to.
But you're talking, that's different.
Yeah, but they use other ways to kill themselves, and men are more successful because they use guns.
But we're talking about attempts. You know what I mean? If you look at the attempts, I think even the attempts are greater for men than they are for women.
Yeah.
Even the attempts.
No, it's because they say that men tend to hold everything in, and then when they just explode, they just, I'm gonna kill myself.
Right.
And women are all constantly crying, so they're letting everything.
Yes, crying is healthy. Crying is healthy. Fighters are certainly the nicest guys you'll meet. Some of them. Oh, they get their stress out. Some of them are actually crazy, though. But the article said last night, I was reading this, and here's the interesting thing. It's not just being successful, but the attempts. Men attempt to kill themselves at something like 4 times higher than women, which is significant. So you say, okay, maybe in a sample there was 10 women out of some huge sample that attempted to kill themselves. 4 times for men, it would be something like 40, if the same sample size. See? So they're not only more successful, but they also attempt it more often. But the irony that the profession that has the highest suicide rate for a profession is doctors. Doctors. And not just that, the attempts and the success. Doctors are very successful at killing themselves. They know how to do it. But doctors, the female doctors, it's about leveled off for female versus male. In other words, the percent of suicides amongst doctors who are female versus doctors who are male are the same. See what I mean? So compared to that of the general population, men are more likely to kill themselves than women, and even attempt to kill themselves than women. But if you're both doctors, then that's about the same. See what I mean? So there's something about the profession that even brings females up to par with males in attempting to kill themselves. Now, the article did try to discuss some of the reasons that's the case. And some of the reasons that that's the case is because doctors are thought of as the people that actually take care of the sick. You know, depression is a big factor in suicide. So people who are depressed are more likely to kill themselves than people who are not depressed. So you can even you can even do that with two different groups. Depressed people versus who? Non-depressed people, whatever that criteria is. So if you're depressed, it's more likely you'll kill yourself than if you're not depressed. Okay? So this comparison that we're talking about, proportions, it's important. It's everywhere. And we're doing hypothesis tests about that. So I don't know. I mean, we could look at the proportion of what? You know, it's suicides. We could do that. Oh, is that true? Is that the case? Single people are more likely to commit suicide than married people? Well, that might be true. Is the fact that you have kids, you know, that's another two different independent groups. You're a person who has kids. You're a person who doesn't have kids. You know, so you can define it all any way you like. And see, here's the thing. This is why you're here. You may sit there and have a certain interest. Maybe you want to write a paper. Maybe you want to go to graduate school. And maybe you want to have a thesis on something where it's like, okay, you want to compare those two. Are you more likely to commit suicide if you have kids than if you don't have kids, and you go out and you do all kinds of research on that? And this is where your hypothesis testing comes in. There's a lot of different, you know, things that you can do. It's a scientific method, so there's a tremendous amount of comparisons. Let's see, what else? Anything else? Anybody have any other interesting statistics about proportion? Maybe we shouldn't talk about death. The proportion of what? High blood. What about it? Well, how about this? Is there certain ethnic groups that are more susceptible to certain diseases? Yeah. The answer is yes. The answer is yes. If you are what? Diabetes? African Americans? Sickle cell? What about cystic fibrosis? That's the Northern European disease, cystic fibrosis. And you guys know what some of the reasons that scientists may think that cystic fibrosis is actually a disease in Northern Europeans? I think they thought it was a lack of deficiency of vitamin, what's that sun? What's the sun actually? If you're in the sun, is it vitamin D, I think? I think it's D. Vitamin D, the claim is that the link between the lack of vitamin D and cystic fibrosis. So if you're in the sun, you got vitamin D, you're okay, I guess, in terms of cystic fibrosis, but I don't know much about it, okay? What we're going to do is just compute these things. So we can actually create something about two groups. We can say what? The proportion of, let's say the proportion of people who